The Ohio train wreck. Did somebody have a hidden motive, either for causing the wreck itself or for the way authorities have handled it? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. On February 3rd, 2023, a train of the Norfolk Southern Railroad derailed near East Palestine, Ohio. The train was carrying a number of hazardous chemicals, including vinyl chloride, a highly lethal toxin and carcinogen. The handling of this train wreck has been atrocious. And now federal authorities will not send any disaster aid. And in all this, the legacy media has maintained near total silence. Furthermore, the country has seen more train wrecks involving hazardous materials in other parts of the country. Now, does this represent incompetence, or does it represent a darker, hidden motive? I can't answer that, but I can and will describe the magnitude of the disaster in Ohio and share everything we know thus far. Before I do want to shout out to the prime sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views. Link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I have chosen for today, which depicts Joe Biden pointing to an explosion behind him and to his right-hand side, and quoting him as saying, "I did that." And I'm asking you to consider the question, might he have done it, or made it worse, deliberately? One more thing. If you like what you're about to hear, you can like this video. You can also click the bell icon to get a notice every time I come out with a new one. In fact, do you see the new icon, the heart shape with the US dollar sign in it? That's the super thanks icon. If you really want to keep these videos coming, click that and leave me a tip. Any currency will do, so long as it's legal tender. Now then, here is what we know. The train derailed on Friday, February 3rd. The next Monday, authorities evacuated everyone within a 1-mile radius of the wreck. Then they decided to burn off the vinyl chloride in most of the train's tank cars. When they did that, they released hydrogen chloride and phosgene gases into the air. Now, let me give you a little education. Yes, I said hydrogen chloride and not hydrochloric acid. Hydrogen chloride is a gaseous molecule. Hydrochloric acid is what you get when you dissolve that gas in water. There's my primer on inorganic chemistry for the day. Phosgene gas goes by the chemical name carbonyl dichloride. That's nasty stuff. The French used it on the battlefield during World War I. With that little bit of background, I have a link in the description to a tweet by a local resident who took video of the burn. He wants to know why the legacy media isn't talking about it more. Now authorities insist that the water is safe to drink and that the air is safe to breathe. But farm animals have died all over Columbiana County, where East Palestine sits. By the way, that second word, it's spelled the same as Palestine in the Middle East, but we pronounce it Palestine in northeastern Ohio. Now, naturally, people were skeptical from the beginning. I have links to 2 tweets from another local resident who also took video. He's also concerned about the lack of attention from the legacy media to the story of this train wreck. He also is highly skeptical of the claims by the authorities. They evacuated only up to a mile away. They tried to burn off over 1 million pounds of an already toxic substance. They released over 100,000 gallons of toxic chemicals into the sky. And now they're telling everybody that the air is good and that the waterways, the private wells, and so on are safe to drink? Come on. Another Twitter user took pictures from 7 miles away. 7 miles, and you can still see the black smoke. I have a link in the description to her tweet so that you can see for yourselves. Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio gave a press conference on February 8th. Police arrested a reporter for daring ask discomforting questions. They charged that reporter with disorderly conduct. Now, authorities have since dropped those charges. I have a link in the description to a YouTube video segment containing Ohio State Highway Patrol footage of the arrest and the lead up to it. The description of that video contains a detailed statement from the East Palestine Police Department. These days, 3 days ago, East Palestine held a town hall to discuss the train wreck, the cleanup, and the state of the environment. The Norfolk Southern Railroad did not send any representatives. The railroad professed concern for their employees' safety. Safety from whom or what? The railroad didn't say. The Environmental Protection Agency insists the area is safe. In response, Senator J.D. Vance, a newly elected Republican from Ohio, dared the local EPA agent to drink the water himself. Senator Vance did more than that. I have links in the description to 4 tweets on his account. In the first, he leaves a statement telling people to call his office if they see, hear, or feel anything at all out of the ordinary. Next, he tells people to get their wells tested and leaves a link to the Columbiana County Health Department where they can get information. Now, that's what I call a true representative of the people. And then the third. Now, this is what many of my fellow influencers would call a based thing to do. He walks next to a local creek in East Palestine, picks up a stick, and rakes the bottom of the creek. What do you think happens? Bubbles come up to the surface. Rainbow bubbles. That's what you get with chemical pollution of the water. That one video got 4.7 million views last time I checked. Finally, he tweets out that he visited with people in the town, heard their concerns, and presumably took notes. The Secretary of Transportation tried to blame former President Trump for the wreck. At issue is a regulation involving rail car brakes that Trump allegedly had lifted, while other rail experts have said that that regulation had nothing to do with the Ohio train wreck. One other person said the scene in Ohio is literally out of a recent Netflix movie set in East Palestine. Maybe you've heard of it. White Noise, directed by Noah Baumbach, with Adam Driver, Greta Gerwig, and Don Cheadle. Netflix, 2022. I have a link in the description to the tweet making the comparison. Governors Mike DeWine and Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania both say the area is safe, and Columbiana County shares a border with Pennsylvania. I think Senator Vance could give either man an argument about that. And finally, before I get to the thread, one other user tweeted out a map showing every toxic chemical event in February alone. Naturally, I have that link in the description also. And now the thread. Twitter user Kaneko the Great started his thread last Monday and added to it in the ensuing days. He called it the largest environmental disaster in American history. I'm linking to the odd numbers so that the very first link is the anchor tweet to all the rest of the thread. And now I'm going to read it to you. Thread. Photos, videos, and news reports about the train derailment and toxic chemical release in East Palestine, Ohio. This may be the largest environmental disaster in U.S. history. You're looking at a toxic cocktail of deadly chemicals purposely being burned off in East Palestine after a train derailment. Authorities burned off vinyl chloride, which is toxic and carcinogenic, and released harmful and dangerous hydrogen chloride and phosgene into the air. Phosgene is a highly toxic, colorless gas with a strong odor that causes vomiting and breathing trouble and was used as a chemical weapon in World War I. Hydrogen chloride is a colorless to yellowish gas with a strong odor that causes skin, eye, nose, and throat irritation. From the Wisconsin Department of Health. exposure to vinyl chloride can affect a person's liver, kidney, lungs, spleen, nervous system, and blood. Human and animal studies show higher rates of liver, lung, and several other types of cancer. The vinyl chloride burn occurred near the Ohio River, which flows directly into the Mississippi River. Thousands of farms may be affected by this. The EPA sent a letter to Norfolk Southern stating that ethylene glycol monobutyl ether, ethyl hexyl acrylate, and isobutylene were also in the rail cars. We basically nuked the town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open. Amanda Brashears found her chickens dead 10 miles from East Palestine. As soon as he started to burn, my chickens slowed down and they died. If he can do this to chickens in one night, imagine what it's going to do to us in 20 years. There are reports of dead fish in rivers and creeks 5 miles away from the train derailment. Here's a picture of dead fish in Leslie Run coming out of East Palestine, Ohio. Taylor Holzer, a fox keeper just outside of the evacuation zone, says one of his foxes died, and all have been acting sick since the vinyl chloride burn. The chemicals we're being told are safe are definitely not safe for animals or people. The top 10 railroad owners of the Norfolk Southern Corporation include Vanguard, J.P. Morgan, and BlackRock. The East Palestine, Ohio toxic chemical burn may be the largest environmental disaster in U.S. history. A former resident of East Palestine says, "It is so much worse than the media tells us. The water has been contaminated. The soil is contaminated. The very air is contaminated." I bubblized just then. 3 new dangerous chemicals were found on the train that derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. Ethylene glycol monobutyl ether, ethyl hexyl acrylate, and isobutylene. Netflix recently released a film called White Noise about a train derailment of toxic chemicals causing a massive explosion and deadly event in East Palestine, Ohio. Here are the CDC's medical management guidelines for vinyl chloride, listing health effects, routes of exposure, patient information sheet, and pre-hospital management. There's also videos showing sparks or flames 20 miles before the train derailment in East Palestine. We have obtained 2 videos which show preliminary indications of mechanical issues on one of the rail car axles. Yeah, if those sparks were flying, that regulation would have had no effect. Now, I'm going to share some more of what Kaneko the Great says about Norfolk Southern, and it is not pretty. Before I do, I want to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you through the economic storms to come. That sponsor is oursilverlines.com. Do you feel like you're working harder for your money just to get by? You are not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, and unexpected changes in life have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know where or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. Whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities this company provides, either way, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit oursilverlines.com to learn how you can build a legacy for your future. Norfolk Southern Corporation, with total assets worth $38 billion in 2020, operates the railway that caused the toxic chemical release in East Palestine, Ohio. Last Monday, the company made a $25,000 donation to assist evacuating residents. Who are they kidding? Norfolk Southern Corporation manages 19,420 route miles in 22 eastern states and the District of Columbia. and has rights in Canada over the Canadian Pacific Railway's Albany to Montreal route. Around 6% of its deliveries are chemicals. A Facebook update yesterday from a Darlington, Pennsylvania kennel owner says after 20 minutes outside, they had horrible headaches, runny noses, burning and swollen eyes, pulsations within the eye sockets, itchy throat, and coughing. After evacuating 30 dogs and 9 horses, the owners are staying evacuated until independent testing of our air, soil, and well water are tested and deemed safe. The EPA's liability letter sent to Norfolk Southern Railway Company on February 10th says, quote, cars containing vinyl chloride, butyl acetate, ethyl hexylacrylate, and ethylene glycol monobutyl ether are known to have been and continue to be released to the air, surface soils, and surface waters. EPA has determined Norfolk Southern Railway Company may be responsible under CERCLA for cleanup, unquote the EPA, which released a manifest that last night from Norfolk Southern, summarizing more chemicals that were released in East Palestine, Ohio. 3 cars of diethylene glycol, 1 car of polypropyl glycol, 1 car of propylene glycol, 2 cars of polyethylene, 2 cars of polyvinyl, and 5 cars of petroleum, meaning, I presume, crude oil. Norfolk Southern Railroad pulled 180,000 gallons of oil and water from the East Palestine train derailment site. The company issued a remediation plan to the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency on Monday, detailing its recovery efforts. Sampled surface water and water from storm sewers, completed over 300 in-home air tests with the EPA, and sampled the village's drinking water system and private wells. From here, the company plans to install an undetermined number of wells to test groundwater and treat it if necessary. Officials will also sample soil in key areas. A hazmat specialist is concerned authorities aren't testing for phosgene, hydrogen chloride, and dioxins in East Palestine, Ohio. Phosgene takes a special photoionization lamp or a special meter. What are they checking for? They only give lists of what they found. They're not telling us what they're checking for. Norfolk Southern checking your house out, it's like the fox guarding the hen house. You don't know the long-term health effects. Taylor Holzer, that fox keeper in East Palestine, says several foxes he keeps on his property became mortally ill. Norfolk Southern Corporation can't get away with what they have done. Kieran is dead. The rest of my foxes are suffering. A resident scoops up dead fish and frogs 4 miles south of the train derailment and toxic chemical release in East Palestine, Ohio. In a single dip of my net, I collected nearly 24 dead or near-dead aquatic animals. Mother talks about her 9-year-old asthmatic son's reaction to the toxic chemical release in East Palestine, Ohio. Quote, he was projectile vomiting across the floor out of nowhere. He was shaking, begging for water. He said he couldn't breathe. He broke out with some rashes. I'm terrified to go back. Close quote. Caitlin Schwartzwelder tells Glenn Beck 4 of her dogs were projectile vomiting. Her eyes and throat got itchy and burned while she visits her home, and she plans to abandon East Palestine forever because of her long-term health concerns. Quote, I had 4 dogs needing emergency veterinarian services because they were projectile vomiting and very lethargic. Going back is extremely uncomfortable. There are physical symptoms every time, from itchy burning, watery eyes, itchy burning throat, coughing, and a weird sensation like your eyes pulsating like a heartbeat. The media is not appropriately displaying that people aren't returning. Some people who didn't have the financial means to stay away longer came back. But anybody who had an option did not go back. The vinyl chloride is like water and travels through the ground and soil like water. It takes time for this stuff to travel through the ground. These levels could be astronomical in 4, 5, or 6 months from now. At this point, Kanakoa adds some breaking news, as he calls it. Now, I am going to condense his thread here because he is now taking advantage of a new feature available to Twitter Blue users like him and just possibly myself. I haven't tested it yet. That allows for supersized tweets. They're the ones with the see more links, and I urge you to click those whenever you see them. Most of what he has to say concerns a company calling itself Center for Toxicology and Environmental Health. The initials are CTEH, pronounced CTE for short. They are not, repeat, not a non-profit independent firm. Calling it a center for anything is at best a misnomer and at worst a cynical lie. These guys like to pretend everything is fine, and as such they have no honor. Don't just take my word for this. Click through to the thread. Kanakoa the Great talks about how this firm got its reputation. An oil spill in Louisiana in 2005. A flood of toxic coal ash in central Tennessee in 2008. Defective Chinese drywall in Florida homes. CTE was on the scene saying everything was fine. In fact, they told their employers what they wanted to hear and lied to the public about everything being safe. They also worked for BP, the former British Petroleum, after the Deepwater Horizon well blew its cap and spilled all that oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Lawmakers told BP to ditch CTE if they wanted any remotely favorable consideration from the representatives of the people. This is the company that Norfolk Southern has hired. It's like asking the fox to guard the henhouse. And what I want to know is, why is the federal government letting that firm anywhere near East Palestine, Ohio? And it gets worse. More than 340 residents have reportedly signed liability contracts with this CTE. Furthermore, the EPA has refused to conduct testing of affected homes. These contracts say that the property owner indemnifies and holds harmless the railroad and CTE against all liabilities. Kanakoa has many more tweets along this vein, including Caitlin Schwartzwalder displaying a bottle of green water that she retrieved from her property after the event. She signed, and now Norfolk Southern is saying that was an accident too. Hardy, har, har, har. One user named Henry Joseph Grant flatly declared that the Ohio event was a depopulation event. He recalled 2 of his previous threads, and I have links in the description to the anchor tweets from both of them. In one, he basically says that when you identify yourself by your ideas, you try to protect them. And if the ideas are bad, you tend to lie and patronize people. In the second one, he flat out says that what he sees happening in the world today is all about population control and eugenics. Well, I don't see the eugenic angle. I just see an attempt at a total wipeout myself. Then he makes this point, and I quote, "There are about 75,000 farms in Ohio. Nearly 90% of these farms are run by families or individuals. Is it such a coincidence that this happened where there is essentially a global war going on through economics and legislation to get small holding farms to either sell or go bust?" Unquote, Henry Joseph Grant. I have a link in the description of that tweet also. Other reaction consists of equal parts speculation on the wider effects and a call for any prominent influencer to share the story more widely. I have links in the description to 2 tweets, one showing where East Palestine is on a map in relation to the Ohio River, and another pointing out the properties of vinyl chloride and how the authorities could and should have cleaned it up without burning it off. Still another user shared a video in which he talked about the controlled burn and its effects. I have a link to it in the description, and you'll see it again on the end screen. And now my analysis. train wrecks actually do happen far more often than most people think. In fact, wrecking a train is ridiculously and frighteningly easy, according to my own intelligence into the rail industry. Now, remember what Henry Joseph Grant had pointed out about Ohio? 75,000 farms with individuals and families owning 90% of them? Well, get this. The rural-urban divide becomes relevant here. You see, Joseph R. Biden, that is, assuming he legitimately won an election in 2020, is the president of the cities, not of the countryside. Comments from members of his cabinet might as well come from him, because they all think as he does. And they pour contempt upon rural Americans and are insulting their intelligence when they say that the local environment is safe. Senator Vance has clearly shown that it is not. In fact, Senator Vance might want to arrange for private protection after giving the EPA the lie the way he did. Big companies do big things, and sometimes they make big mistakes. But if they won't own those mistakes, they can't expect anyone to trust them. Part of good stewardship is being a good neighbor to everyone whom your activities might affect. Norfolk Southern was not a good neighbor to East Palestine and Columbiana County, Ohio. And they will rue the day that they tried to cover this thing up. But suppose, as Henry Joseph Grant suggests, the Ohio train wreck was not an accident. Who, for example, decided to burn off vinyl chloride, thus producing and releasing hydrogen chloride and phosgene? That is carelessness of a phenomenal order, or very deadly sabotage. Add to it the other chemical release events throughout the country, and these mysterious fires destroying food processing plants. You've heard me quote Ian Fleming before today. I know, and I'm going to quote him again. Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, and the third time it's enemy action. Links to the description of the article, to the first 4 tweets from local residents after the wreck and the burn, to the video of the reporter getting arrested, to 4 tweets by Senator Vance, to the tweet about the movie White Noise, to the tweet with the map of other toxic events, to Kanakoa the Great's thread, to 5 tweets in reaction to it, to 1 resident story on video, to my Declarations of Truth Twitter account, and to Conservative News and Views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV Store and to oursilverlines.com, as I also mentioned. You know already about how to like a video, turn on notifications, and leave a tip. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link to my channel. And I'm going to leave links to both those 2 videos that I've mentioned and video from at least 1 other influencer. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.